All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. And hello, this is your host, Matt Brunquell, for today's webinar on leveraging TD code for mobile apps. TD Mobile is for easy and fast development of mobile apps. And this month's live webinar shows you how you can speed up your mobile development even more, leveraging the business logic in your existing TD code. So in this webinar, you will learn what parts of TD apps can be reused with TD Mobile, how to prepare TD code for TD mobile apps, and also see a demonstration of how this works. Now, before we get started, I want to review a few housekeeping items. As existing TD customers, you know we are Gupta Technologies, which is a part of Dagis. For those of you not familiar with Dagis, we're a US-based company that offers solutions to help their customers manage, modernize, and mobilize their data worldwide. And Dagis does this by offering solutions across information governance and archiving, database and development tools, and application modernization tools. Now, we encourage questions on the webinar, and the way you do that is to use the Q&A button on your WebEx toolbar, and it's the button with the question mark. Now, there's also a chat button, but it makes it easier for Gary and I to look in one panel for the questions to make sure we address all of them. Now, I mentioned Gary, and that's Gary Betancourt, who will be presenting and providing the demonstration portion today. And Gary is a senior software engineer at Gupta Technologies, where he's responsible for designing the client-side tools used by TD Mobile, and also contributes to the custom integrated development environment and .NET compiler that's used by the product. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Gary so we can get started. And I think I also need to unmute him.
Okay. So thanks, Matt. So what we're going to be going over today is, how to leverage your existing TD code in mobile applications. We understand that, a lot of our customers have spent, years developing their code assets for their desktop-based applications, and we wanted to show you how you can rather than having to, rewrite and port all that code over to mobile applications, you can actually reuse a good portion of that in your mobile applications if you want to, mobilize some of your applications. So on the agenda today, I'll be talking about, what can be shared between the two products and what changes might be necessary for you to enable that, how to go about actually including that TD code in the mobile app, and then just a short demo at the end. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with the APL format. That's how you create reusable code libraries in TD that you can share amongst your desktop applications. Well, TD Mobile, although it has a new outline format called an APX, it can still use that APL format. So you can create shareable components that you can both use in TD and TD Mobile. So what can be shared? It's primarily non-GUI components. The GUI is so different between a desktop and a mobile device that we couldn't, enable sharing of forms and grids and that type of logic. So it's anything that's non-GUI related, like functional classes, global functions, any variables or constants you might have defined in those APLs. Now, some changes might need to be made to that APL for it to be shared in a TD Mobile application. The first thing is you have to say that APL in text format. So our TD Mobile IDE can't read the binary format of an APL, so it needs to be saved in text format. Now, if you have any GUI classes or forms, dialogues, menus that happen to exist in an APL, we'll ignore those components when you bring it into TD Mobile. So if you have any code behind those, like any event actions that we wouldn't be able to compile for a mobile app, that's fine because we'll ignore that code when you bring it across. But if you happen to have any window-based code in, say, a functional class or a global function that is, using a window handle data type or is referencing one of our window variables like hwinform, those are not valid in a mobile application, and so you will get compile errors if you have those included in that code. So that might be something you might have to change with your APL, reorganize some of your code so that you don't have any non-supported code down in your functional classes or global functions that we wouldn't be able to compile in a mobile application. Now, if you're not aware, our TD Mobile product is .NET based, so your code is actually going to be compiled by our .NET compiler and run primarily as web services in an ASP.NET container. So as you're probably aware, we also have that same .NET compiler available in our TD product. So probably a good first step, if you have a license, is to turn on the .NET build setting on your APL and make sure that it compiles fine there, because our .NET compiler is a little more strict than Win32. .NET is strongly typed, so you can't do some of the more loose data type interactions that you might be able to do in Win32. Also, there are some functions that aren't supported. We probably have more than 90% support on the .NET side, but there are a few that are Win32 specific. And for even better results, you'd want to try turning on our web service compilation, since in TD Mobile, your code is essentially going to be compiled to a web service. And just like in TD Mobile, a TD web service can't reference a window handle because there's no windowing environment on a web service. So if you turn on the .NET build setting and compile for a web service, then you're going to have a pretty good idea of whether that APL will compile okay in a TD Mobile application. Another thing to consider is, are there any platform differences that you need to be aware of between, a desktop environment and what TD Mobile is, and that's a server environment. In a desktop application, your SAL code is going to be run by a single thread and be used by a single user, have its own memory space. Whereas in a server application, that application code is going to be run by potentially many concurrent threads and many users at the same time. And so you have to be aware of those differences when you are going to be using that code in an APL in a TD Mobile application. Probably the biggest area of concern for APL code is database access. We see many times developers opening up a database connection handle and leaving that open and reusing it throughout the application. Whereas in a server environment, that's not typically what you would do. You'd like to open a connection, execute a query, and then close that connection, because that one single process is going to be handling many different users and threads at the same time. You really want to return resources back and not potentially run out of database connections. And so fortunately, .NET database drivers all implement connection pooling. And so when you're opening and closing connections, it's actually pretty inexpensive because it's just returning those connections to a connection pool for reuse. And so that's probably the biggest change in paradigm between the two, is you really don't want to be opening up connections and leaving them open. Also, you have to be aware of threading issues. So, avoid using, global variables that are not thread safe. And again, the biggest one here is going to be the SQL variables like SQL user and SQL database. If those are dynamic in your application, so say some user, when they log in, they select that they're from, this organization, and you dynamically set the database based off of that. Well, since that is a global variable, that could be set by one thread, and then another thread comes in and sets it to another value. So we recommend, if those values are dynamic in your application, to avoid using SQL Connect and instead use the newer function called SQL Connect.net, which uses what's called a .NET connection string. And so all the connectivity information, the username, password, database name, all of that's encapsulated in a string that's not a globally shared variable. So that's the biggest thing when you're considering platform differences is, database access, resource usage, and any threading issues that you need to be aware of. So how do you use an APL in TD Mobile? So in the TD Mobile IDE, we have an Explorer tree on the left, just like we do in TD. And we have this Files node. And the Files node will show you quickly all of the files that make up that TD Mobile application. So just like in TD, where you can have the main APT and then several APLs that are libraries that make up your application, the same is true for TD Mobile. So the parent main project is an APX, and you can have other APX libraries or other APL libraries included in that project, and it'll all show here under the Files node. Now, anytime you select a parent node, for instance, in this case, the Files node, on the right-hand side, you get a pane that allows you to, add new items to that node. So when you select on the Files node on the right-hand side, you get this pane, and you can click on the plus icon and either include an APX or an APL into your application. So this slide shows you on the left an APL that I wrote, and it has a variety of components that are shareable, like global functions, variables, constants, and functional classes. And as you can see on the right, when I brought that into TD Mobile, all of those elements are brought in, and their location might change slightly from where you saw them in TD versus where they're going to be at in TD Mobile. So if you're familiar with our TD Mobile product, we try and segment things between client and server side. Now all of your APL code is going to be considered server side logic, and so you'll find all of your imported code under the server resources section, and underneath there you'll see a variable section, and you can see I have a variable here called company ID that was brought over. You'll see constants, and then internal functions, and all of your functional classes were all brought over there. Now, one thing that's slightly different between the TD and TD Mobile is, unlike in TD, you can actually edit your APL code directly from that parent project. So if you have a line of SAL code in a global function, you can go in there and tweak it and make saves and make edits to it from that parent project. You don't have to switch back and forth between the TD IDE and TD Mobile. Also, unlike TD, we don't show all of the included APL code in this blue format. So the way you tell where code is coming from is when you click on, as I mentioned, one of those top level nodes, like in this case, the classes node, you get this list of all of the items, and you'll notice a source file column. And that's where you can quickly tell where code is coming from. So in this instance, most of my functional classes are coming from my Island Live APL. You can see this last class is actually coming from my parent project, the Island Mobile APX. So that's a quick way for you to for you to identify where your code is coming from. Now you can, when you hit save in your application, we kind of have a fine-tuned save where you can choose to just save edits to that APL or just save edits to your APX. or you can do a save all, which will push all changes made to your application to all of the included libraries and parent project. Okay, so let me give you a quick demo of how you can do this. So I'm going to go ahead and open up TD here and show you my APL that I've created. So what I wanted to do is create an APL that was a sort of like a front end to the sample island database that is included with SQL Base. And so what I've done is I've created several functional classes that map to individual tables in that database. And each functional class has instance variables that will map to columns in that database. And then I've created some helper functions, and just for the sake of demonstration, some of those functions are, going to be global functions, and other functions will actually be just functions down in the classes themselves. And I did that just to show both working. So these helper functions will do things like, fetch all of the companies in the database and return me an array of company objects. And the same is true for all of these other functional classes. So if I go into, say, invoice, I have a function to get me all invoices for a company based off of its name. So I just pass in a name of a company and a array of invoices, and then I just have some standard SAL code that's going to populate that array with data. So what I've done is I've created a Win32 application and included that library here, and I've got my build option just set to Win32. Then I've created just a simple form here that allows the user to select a company. When they choose a company, it will list the invoices for that company, and then as they select an invoice, I'll populate all the invoice items that go along with that invoice. And so all of the code that does this is mostly happening down in the APL. So I'm calling those helper functions here, like get all companies, to populate that combo box. So all of the database interaction is all occurring in the APL code. So let me go ahead and run this. So if I click find, I fetch all of the invoices. If I select an invoice here, I get the invoice details here below. So now if I want to, say I have some sales people that are on the road, and I want to allow them to quickly check up on invoice information, so I want to create like a mobile front end to this same application. Now I can take that APL and include it in TD Mobile and quickly create a UI that is a mobile front end to this business logic here. So let me open up TD Mobile. So as I mentioned before, we have this files node here. If I select it, I get a pane on the right that allows me to include other libraries into this project. So let me go ahead and save this project here. Let's call it a test. Then I'll click on this plus icon here, and now I can browse for libraries. I'm going to select this Island Lib library here. And you can see as when I did that, it went ahead and populated all of the various resources that were brought over. So if I click on the class node, you can see it brought over all of these functional classes, and they're all coming from this Island library here. I can open up one of them. You can see all my instance variables and functions came over. And now I can start just manually developing screens. So I can start, adding, controls to my pages. Say if I want to have a list of companies, I can just drop a list view down, and then create create operations that will call into these functional classes here to do that. Another way you can do it is make use of our built-in data wizards here to create a lot of the user interface for you. So because I have everything encapsulated in classes, this is pretty easy to do in TD Mobile. So I can go ahead and select one of those functional classes. So say if I wanted to create a user interface to interact with invoices, I can just select my invoice functional class. Then I can select which page types I want to generate. I'm going to go ahead and select this last one here that allows me to create what's called a list page, which will have a page that will list all of the invoices, a detail page, which is a page where if I select one of those invoices, it will show me a read-only page with all the details of that invoice, and then an edit page, so the user can click edit and actually change values on that invoice. So down below, I can customize what fields I want to show on those pages. The only thing I'm going to change here is I don't want to have them see or edit the invoice number. That'll be something that's just behind the scenes. So other than that, I'm going to leave everything default and just click go. And what you'll see here is the ID automatically generates 3 pages for me. A list page, which has a list view, which will show an array of invoices, and then a detail page, which will show me just read-only information about that invoice. And if I click on this edit button, we'll be taken to an edit page that allows me to actually just tweak, values like the amount or the status of that invoice. So I go back to the list page, I can show you that what we have here is it generates some of the binding information that I need to bind my user interface components with backend data. And then it gives me an operation that just has a stub. So this operation is called populate invoice, which returns an array of invoice items. And then I just have to add my own code here to populate that array. And that's pretty easy to do because everything here is encapsulated in the classes themselves. So I can just say, call object invoice, get all invoices for company name, and that will populate this array, and then I can just return it back to the client. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up an application that I've already built. It's called Island Mobile. And so just like in that other application here, I've got that Island Live APL, and then I've created 3 different screens. So you'll notice in that Win32 application, everything was on one screen where I would select the company, and then I could select the invoice, and then I would get the invoice details below. Typically, in a mobile application, you want to try and split things out amongst several screens, so you're not making screens that are too busy. And so what I have are 3 pages. One that allows me to select the company I want to see invoices for. That will take me to another page which shows invoices. And then finally, if I select that invoice, I go to another page that shows me the list of invoice items for that. So all 3 of these pages just have list views. Again, the code for it is fairly straightforward. It's just using all those helper functions down in the APL to populate data. So I'm just calling, get all companies and then returning an array of companies. Same for, showing all the invoices for that company. So all of this, all of the logic for interacting with the database is all being done in the APL itself. So let me go ahead and run this example. I just click go. So I get a page here that lists all the companies in the database. I can select a company. It'll show me all of the invoices. So I'll select the first one. and then it shows me a list of invoice items. So that's just a quick demonstration of how you can, very easily, share, in this case, code between a Win32 application and a TD Mobile application. So very little code is actually done in the UI, and most of it's done in the APL. And this is a quick and easy way to share code between the two products. So that concludes the demo portion of the webinar. I think I'm going to hand it over to Matt to do our Q&A.
Great, thanks, Gary. So just as a reminder for everyone to post questions, there is on your WebEx toolbar a button with the question mark. If you can, post the questions there so Gary and I can just look in one place, and we'll go ahead and give you a moment to do that. While we do that and wait for the questions to come in, I want to make sure everyone here is aware that we actually have a promo going on for TD Mobile right now through the end of April, where you can order a license or multiple licenses of TD Mobile, and you'll get a 20% discount off of the product portion if you order that between now and the end of April. And if you have questions about that, you can follow up with your sales rep on that. And with that, we'll just give you a moment here to start posting the questions. Okay, first question. TD Mobile supports main screen design, reporting, and charting for TD conversion, but pop-up window for selecting lookup value is missing. When do we get pop-up window? This is important for converting TD application.
So I know Martin, I think, is on the line, and I believe we're going to add a dialog window in a future release. I don't know what version we're targeting that for, but that is something that we are looking into.
Yes, Gary, you're right. Yes, that's on the list for the next TD Mobile convert that is currently installed this year.
Thanks, Martin. For those of you that couldn't hear Martin's audio, it was a little bit faint. Martin Tietz is our product manager for TD Mobile, and he was just confirming what Gary said, which is we're adding that dialog. Is dialog box feature the right way to describe it?
That's not actually showing it what kind of technology you're going to use. That's something that will fulfill exactly that requirement.
So that's something we're looking to add in an upcoming release. And Martin, could you just send that in a chat really quick, because your audio is coming through is really garbled. So I just want to make sure that I'm able to repeat exactly what you said. So I'm sure we'll get questions from the audience about exactly what you said. In fact, yeah, I've already gotten a comment. All right, next question. Gary, this one's for you. Is the sample that you showed for the Island demo database, will that be available?
Yeah, we can make it available. If I can package it up and make it available as like a download somewhere, if you'd like.
Great. Yeah, let's do that. And what we'll do is we'll make it available on the website where all of the other samples are that we have for TD Mobile. And for those of you on the line that haven't used the trial version of TD Mobile yet, there's a trial version available, but just as important, there's an area with a lot of samples to help give you some reference points and just ideas for when you're building your project. All right, next question. You talked about TD.net. Is that needed to use TD Mobile? The answer to that, just in case for some of you it wasn't clear, is no. The TD Mobile uses the same .NET compiler underneath of it as TD.net, but you do not need TD.net in order to use TD Mobile. Now, what Gary was just pointing out, though, in his presentation was that if you do have TD.net as well, since all of you are various TD customers, certainly one of the things you can do to just help in your transition over to TD Mobile, if you're going to be leveraging existing TD code, is compile it in TD.net as a reference. And when you look at the recording for this, you can see what he was suggesting there. Next question. How long has TD Mobile been out? Well, the product has actually been out for a little bit over a year, about 14 months. And we actually have over about 70 customers at this point, and a lot of them actually have TD Mobile apps in production. Next question. What will happen to the APLs which have VT functions? Is it able to convert?
It depends on the VT function. So if you're doing things that I think there are VT functions that allow you to do file I/O or manipulate arrays. Those kind of things can be brought over, but anything that is window related, no, we won't be able to convert it. And it is important to state that we're not really doing any conversion per se when you include an APL. We're just reading that APL, parsing it, and including the items in the project. And so there's not any conversion going on. So if you make edits to that APL within the TD Mobile IDE, change a line of Sal and hit save, then that APL can then be opened up still in TD. We don't change the format in any way. But yeah, so it depends on what VT functionality you're using.
Great. By the way, just for those of you that had trouble hearing Martin's audio, what he was saying was that we are going to provide a type of dialogue feature with the next version of TD Mobile. And for those of you that don't know, the current version that's out right now is TD Mobile 1.2. Martin also mentioned that the sample that Gary showed will be available tomorrow. And again, that's on the TD Mobile samples page. I'll see if I can put this up on the screen here shortly. But if those of you that haven't been on that yet, if you go under the support section on our Gupta Technologies website, you'll find the support wiki, and if you go to that, you'll find samples actually for many of our different products. But if you go to the TD Mobile section, you'll find it there. Next question. I'm trying to, English is a second language here, but is make an APK to install in Android mobile? I'm not sure how to translate that question. It's make an APK to install an Android mobile. If you can reword that question a little bit, we'll try and answer that for you. Unless, Gary, you understand what that means.
Yeah, so I see a question here, and it's saying, can you take the HTML5 CSS JavaScript and convert it into an Apache Cordova application, which you could then, natively deploy on iOS or Android? And so the answer to that is currently you can manually do that. You can take existing TD Mobile application and run it through the Apache Cordova. If you guys aren't familiar with Apache Cordova, it's also referred to as PhoneGap. That it was developed by Adobe, and their commercial product is called PhoneGap, but they also open sourced it, and it's called Apache Cordova. And it allows you to take an HTML5 application, and it creates what's called a hybrid application. So you can actually natively, deploy these apps to Android or iOS or Windows Phone, and it's a native app that you deploy through the App Store. So you can do that manually using their build tools. Now, we already have in the product, and we're preparing it for release here shortly, is we're going to have a build option that you can turn on that allow you to tell us, what you would do is you would create a Cordova project on your PC, and you would tell us, where that project folder is, and we would automatically, compile the application with any necessary changes made for a Cordova project, and we'll push all of your assets over to that project folder, make the necessary configuration changes, and then with just a couple of quick command line commands, actually create that native application. And so it'll be pretty slick when we release it. You can literally in just minutes create a native application that you can deploy to Android or iOS. So that is something that we are going to be releasing shortly. So I'll just recap. You can do it manually today. It does require you to manually create the project and move files over. But in a future release, we're going to make it more automated, where you just enable a build option to create Cordova projects.
Excellent. Next question. Somebody noticed, Gary, that you were using TD6.3, and they want to know when that will be available. And so just so you know, we are targeting that for release. Let me look at my calendar here. Either, I think, next week. Late next week. So, yeah, hang on there for those of you waiting for 6.3. We're expecting that to come out late next week.
I see another question. Can we connect TD Mobile to a SQLite database? And I assume, I assume that you're talking about connecting to a SQLite database on the client, or on the. I'm not sure if you're talking about client or server, but so some browsers came out with the ability to actually embed a SQLite database within the browser itself. I think Safari and Chrome both had support for that. And there was going to be an HTML5 spec, I believe it was called Web SQL, where you could actually have SQL code in JavaScript where you could insert data into a table and select from it. That spec kind of died, and now what is being more formalized now is a new standard called IndexedDB, and that's most likely going to be the standard going forward. And Safari and Chrome all have support for that. And that rather than using a SQL-like API, will be more like a document store that you'd see in a NoSQL database, where you can just take JavaScript objects and store it in the database and retrieve them later. And because the interfaces for those is just standard JavaScript, and you can write JavaScript in TD Mobile, yes, you can connect to those type of databases in TD Mobile. And I have demos that I've done for our DevCons where I show us connecting to an IndexedDB database, inserting and fetching data from that.
So, yeah, the answer to that is yes, we can do that. Next one is handling of APL files. Hold on. Questions are still coming in, so it scrolled it out of my view. Handling of APL files that are including other APLs. I notice this has improved, but what can we, still not perfect. What can we expect for the future?
I'm not aware of any issues there. If there are, please, let us, go through your support channel to let us know, and we'll definitely make improvements there.
Great. While converting APLs, the resource which included in APLs will convert automatically.
I would need more specifics on, which resources you're referring to. Are these, image files? Typically, you couldn't really use, any embedded images in that APL in TD Mobile. We for the web, you want to use, JPEG or PNG or GIFs, and we in TD Mobile currently support, selecting a file from disk there, because when your web browser renders an image, it always will request it from a URL on the server. And so if that's what you're asking, then no, we wouldn't support like an embedded image, for instance.
Yeah, he says like icon and images.
Yeah, those you would want to actually to give us a file, and then during the build process, we would copy that file over to the server so it can be published that way. So yeah, we don't support embedded images.
Okay. Next question is, I understand MongoDB and TD Mobile is not supporting to write our own SQL through SQL *** functions. Is that something provided in the future? We would require to build our own calculations and fetch next.
Yes, that's a great question. So MongoDB is a document store, and its API for fetching documents is based off of like a JavaScript query language, and so the syntax and model is so different from SQL that we didn't want to support fetching data through our existing SQL functions. We'd have to do some very complex conversions to support that. And so right now, access through MongoDB is all done through what we call our data connection interface. So that allows you to, without having to write any code, fetch and do CRUD operations against those documents. So you can, create, read, update, delete. Now we understand that's a very basic model, and it's a nice feature for one of our initial releases. Now in the future, if you want to do more complex things like have calculated fields or execute custom code after you do a fetch, we are going to be supporting that in a future release where you can, have calculated fields. So if you wanted to have, say, a last name.
Well, we lost Gary there on audio. Hey, Gary, just so you know, I see you're still connected, but
So we're going to continue. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. It's like it fast
Okay.
forwarded all the audio that was silent. We lost you for like 20 seconds.
So I don't know how much of that came through, but basically we're going to continue to improve our data connection interface so you can have things like calculated fields and whatnot. So that is something to look forward to.
Great. What happens to APLs which have APD?
The DynaLibs, gosh, I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. I haven't tested that. I don't believe we support DynaLibs in our on our .NET compiler.
Okay. We'll have to get back to you on that. One sec, I'm just making a note on that, and then we'll... Next question, TD Mobile takes more time to open the application if I have included more libraries. Means more functional classes, more global operations, expanding and collapsing any objects inside TD Mobile takes time.
If there's any performance-related issues there, I'm not aware of it, but certainly we could, we can look at any specific issue that you might be having there. So I'm not aware of. We have tested very large projects, and I know the tree that we use in the Explorer tree does have some animations as it expands and collapses. If that is taking too long, we can look into, removing those animations, which should improve the performance a little bit. Okay.
Next question. When will TD6.3, so this is the second time this has been asked, when will this be available? Is any demo available? So TD6.3 will be available late next week. And when that is launched, the trial version will be available. If you do need additional information, though, on it, please let me know. All right, that looks like that's all the questions that we have. So Gary and I want to thank you for participating in the webinar today. We hope you found it useful and interesting. And I see a few more questions coming up here, so we'll answer those here as we close out. But did want to remind everybody that there is a promotion going on as of right now for TD Mobile. If you're interested in getting the product, it's a great time to get it between now and the end of April. We will have this presentation and demo and all the Q&A session available as a recorded webinar on our website, and that should be available either tomorrow or Monday morning at the latest. And next question, so there's two more questions here. TD Mobile is designed to support jQuery Mobile. Is that something will support Bootstrap in future?
We don't have any plans to support Bootstrap at the moment. When we came out with TD Mobile, we kind of had to standardize on one control set that we would support out of box. And jQuery Mobile had a pretty nice set of GUI components. Having said that, we've had other customers, and we've done this in our own samples. It's not hard to incorporate other third-party control frameworks into a TD Mobile application, and we've made that even more easy in some of the latest releases, like 1.2. So you can include, the Bootstrap JS into your project and make use of any components that you would like from there. So you do that with, by using our JS libraries project feature, and then we have what's called a custom HTML control you can drop on your page, and you can put in whatever HTML snippet you want there. So it is something that you can do if you like.
So with that, Gary and I hope you have a great day, and hope you keep TD Mobile in mind for fast and easy mobile development. Thank you.